Alright dude, during the Elbaf arc we've now seen Scopper Gaban riding into battle like an absolute chat in front of an army of giants, and I just can't stop myself from wondering exactly how strong this guy and the rest of his crew actually are and were in the past. Like, the giants here seem to think he is basically invincible, and he gave Luffy and Zoro even a pretty major shock. But really, everything that we've learned about Scopper Gaban and Elbaf just 100% reinforces the fact that the Roger pirates as a collective were the absolute pinnacle of the pirate world. Probably the best to ever do it. And of course, you and me know about the heavy hitters like Scopper, Rayleigh, and Roger, but did you know that the Roger pirates, for instance, are one of the largest crews where we know the name of every single crewmate? That's kind of wild when you think about it. Oda almost never does stuff like that, which kind of makes me think that all of these guys still might have a very important role to play towards the end of the story. So today, in this video, I want to break down with you everything that we know about the Roger pirates and their legendary captain, Gold the Roger himself. Now, to begin with, I won't lie, for years we basically all assumed that the strongest Roger pirates were Roger, duh, at the top, then his second in command right below him, and then with some distance, Scopper Gaban, you know, a little bit down the barrel. But definitely not on the same level as the Pirate King or the Dark King Rayleigh. But now, I gotta say, I'm not so sure about that anymore. Scopper is an absolute monster, and with his dual axes, he can just casually slice through an entire section of the giant's castle here with barely a flick of his wrist. Just to give you some perspective here, we're talking like Mihawk slicing through the iceberg at Marineford type of casual strength. So I think we can say for sure that this dude is the real deal. And we've obviously learned a ton more about him during Elbaf, since it's the first time we actually got to meet him in person outside of a flashback or a cover story, but all that we've learned so far is honestly beyond impressive already. I mean, just look at these little flashbacks here. I never would have thought that Scopper would be scolding Roger like a kid for his recklessness, or that my man here also protected the Pirate King while he was sick, bringing him to a hospital surrounded by enemy forces. Well, let's be real though, there's probably nothing more impressive about Scopper than the fact that this man somehow risked up this giant lady right here. Like, seriously, I mean, I know that almost all the Roger pirates have a thing for the ladies and, you know, have been romanticizing around, and surprisingly, almost all of the main crewmates have romantic partners at this point, but nothing, and I mean nothing, tops the sheer audacity of Scopper having a child with a giant woman. Like, don't get me wrong, but this is insane. And even though I know that you want me to dive into how exactly a human had a child with a giant, but nah, I'm not touching that subject. I don't want to think too much about how that actually works to begin with, but I do wonder where Scopper got his whole attitude about love from in the first place. Because I might be wrong about this, but to me it doesn't seem at least like he was that much of a romantic guru, you know, while he was traveling with the Roger pirates. So what actually happened to him after the crew broke up, or maybe when they went to Laugh Tale? Was this his way of coping with Roger's death by finding love all around the world? I mean, we do know that he's not been in Elbaf the entire time, and, you know, even visited with Crocus during the time skip here. So yeah, my guy here is pretty wildly traveled, I would say. But so far at least, he and Roger are actually the only confirmed members of the crew to have had children. So I kind of wonder if that was actually all part of the Roger pirates' big plan once they found Laugh Tale and learned the true history, because believe me, there absolutely was a big plan here. In case you don't know what I'm talking about or don't believe me, let me break it down for you. Once the Roger pirates got to Laugh Tale, they knew that they were too early to use whatever information they had learned here. But then it's pretty obvious, I think, that Roger basically decided that he needed to create the next Joy Boy, which is why he had a son, and then spread out his most important crewmates all along the Grand Line to basically help that person along his path to becoming the next Joy Boy and finding Laugh Tale once again. And it was probably all going more or less according to plan, with Shanks stealing the Nika fruit, until Luffy decided to eat that fruit, which I'm pretty positive Shanks actually was planning to bring to Roger's son Ace, who was living on that same island. I mean, come on, that had to be what was going down here, but that plan was completely gone now, so Luffy instead took on the role of the next Joy Boy, and, you know, Shanks giving him Roger's straw hat as the main symbol to identify him, the Roger pirates then knew that he was the one they were supposed to wait for and help help along his way. Now, to be fair, this is of course still a theory, so don't hate me if it turns out wrong, but you kind of see why this seems very likely and makes a ton of sense. And there are a ton of other interesting facts and theories about the Roger Pirates, and we will break down a bunch of the most important ones, including what in the world is going on with that giant egg on his ship. But really, I do think that the theory that Roger's plan to create and support the next Joy Boy is basically confirmed at this point, and it might even play a huge role in the final war because there are still tons of really powerful fighters from the Roger crew who could show up to help Luffy fight as well. Like, you know, the strongest Roger pirate of them all, the one so powerful they had to nerf him with a devil fruit. Of course, I'm talking about the one and only failing up king, future pirate king, Buggy the Clown. And yeah, some people tend to forget, maybe on purpose, that he actually was part of Roger's crew, but yeah, he sure was, because at some point during the Roger Pirates adventures, they picked up a baby Buggy to be an apprentice alongside with Shanks. And I always find it fascinating to remember that, you know, he was actually a quite promising young pirate at that point. I mean, it can't get much better than being on the crew of the Pirate King, but Buggy was pretty much cursed from the beginning because, unlike the rest of the crew, he was genuinely obsessed with pirate treasure. Like, we're talking having treasure on his mind basically 24/7. But what's really hilarious here is that his greed eventually led him to accidentally eat a devil fruit, which then set him apart from the entire rest of the crew even more. I'm kind of even wondering how he even lasted so long on Roger's crew to begin with, but anyways. His fall off was legendary because he went from the highest peak of piracy, almost going to Laugh Tale, to being, you know, a small fry pirate terrorizing tiny towns in the East Blue, which of course is where we first meet him in the story back in Orangetown. But let me tell you, things have changed for him quite a bit since he was blasted away by Luffy back then, and he can thank his famous habit of failing upwards through sheer luck, good timing, and a little bit of charisma for this. Because somehow, through none of his own feats, I would argue, Buggy has become a Yonko, an Emperor of the Sea, and one of the quote-unquote leaders of Cross Guilds. So yeah, based on how Oda writes him, I would not be surprised one little bit if Buggy accidentally becomes known as Pirate King in the future as well. Unless, of course, Buggy has been fooling everyone, including us, and is actually secretly a mastermind. But probably not. Alright, Buggy maybe wasn't that strong back then, I'll admit it, but if we're gonna talk about the strongest fighters on the Roger Pirates, I think these guys definitely fit the role of guys that you want in a straight-up fight, because this crew looks absolutely vicious. I mean, come on, just look at the concept art for Yamon and Rangram here. These dudes look like a reincarnation of the Shandian warrior Kalgara, and you know, they're down to use that spear and axe to throw down with pretty much anyone. Then we also have this dude, Taro here, whose name, interestingly enough, can translate to eldest son, or I prefer big boy, which is just also kind of hilarious. Like, Oda, you sure that's really what you wanted to name him? But then we also have got Jackson Banner, who actually uses the same weapons that Blackbeard used as a kid, you know, with the claw you can see on his hands here. So is there some connection between him and the former Whitebeard pirate? That could be pretty interesting. But alright, listen, I can't go any further here without talking about the biggest mystery surrounding all of the Roger Pirates. And no, it's not how Roger's big mustache is actually apparently his nose hair. Nope, gross. The question is, what in the world is this giant damn egg on his ship? This thing is massive and no one ever says a single word about it. Like, come on, where are the conspiracy theories posting on Reddit about the mysterious egg? We've got some, but I haven't seen one in a while, and this is what I want to know about. What is this thing? Where did it come from? Like, seriously, I've lost a lot of sleep throughout the years thinking about this thing, and I even made a whole video a couple of years ago speculating all about it. Let me break it down for you. From what we know, it's pretty obvious that Roger had this egg before he reached Laugh Tale, so it didn't come from that legendary island. We also know that he already had it when he was battling Shiki, which was after he reached Lodestar Island and knew he had to find the poneglyphs. So if I wanted to make an educated guess here, I'd probably say he got the egg on Lodestar Island and was carrying it around with him ever since. And they didn't just bring it to Laugh Tale either, because it still was with them after they came back from the island. Which then of course leaves us with the question, what did they do with it? And I wanna know really badly, but just to speculate a little bit here, there are a bunch of theories that this egg is actually a real original dragon egg. Now, in case you didn't know, it is a fact that dragons once existed as real creatures in the One Piece world, so maybe this egg is like the last remaining dragon egg or something like that. Then there's also some ideas that it could be an ancient weapon. Obviously, it's not Poseidon or Pluton, but it could be Uranus, which, you know, is supposed to be some sort of flying weapon potentially. It's at least possible. We do think that Emu currently probably has Uranus, but it's also possible they got it after Roger's death, since we haven't seen that egg in over 20 years now. Then I've also heard a pretty silly theory that Luffy was born from the egg, but come on, like, we don't really believe that, or do we? Nah. But it could, of course, also be some ancient bird from mythology, something like the Middle Eastern roc, which we, have Luffy's attack named after, or the Hindu Garuda, which would fit with something that could hatch from a giant egg as well. As we know, Oda has dipped his toes into all of these mythologies quite often before, or did Big News Morgan actually hatch from this massive egg? I mean, wouldn't that be the disappointment of the century? But yeah, this is honestly one of those things I am most curious about in all of One Piece, so I do hope we actually get an answer to this mystery sooner rather than later. Moving things back to the crew here though, can we just admit that some of the guys that Oda put on Roger's crew straight up look like bums? I mean, seriously, just look at this guy, Idio right here. This dude just straight up looks like a tourist with his Hawaiian shirt and floppy hat. So how did this dude end up on the strongest crew of monsters? Another question that needs to be studied for sure, but even he isn't as questionable as Rowing here, who honestly is hands down potentially the most derpy character in this entire crew. Then we've also got an old timer like Blue Marine here in his striped prison shirt, and then Bankuro, who is kind of giving me monkey vibes with the craziest hair of anyone in the crew. And then I also wanted to show you Spencer here, who we basically know nothing about at all, but just seems like a normal dude with a sword, I guess. Like, if these guys are on the crew, then can you and I just join the Roger Pirates as well, please? Maybe? Let's be real though, they're probably secretly insanely busted as well. Say what you want about those 5, but the next group of Roger Pirates we're gonna talk about here is absolutely legendary. Yeah, you know what time it is. It's time to bust out the famous samurai and absolute Chad of One Piece, Kozuki Oden. Now, you may not have realized it, but Oden only joined the Roger Pirates for a teeny tiny part of their adventure. Pretty much only the last year of a decades-long journey, but in the end was nonetheless absolutely vital to them being able to find Laugh Tale. Because don't forget that without Oden, they wouldn't have been able to even find the final island in the first place, because no one else could read and identify the poneglyphs. And of course, we all know about Oden and his, shall we say, complicated history surrounding Wano. I mean, he was a true problem child growing up as the son of the Shogun, but really he just wanted to be free to leave Wano and adventure around the world. Like, bro, this dude was just desperate for some freedom, which is exactly what he then did do when he practically begged Whitebeard to take him along on his ship. And let's be real, there was just no holding him back. He got his wish granted and eventually met his wife Toki, who has her own very complicated history as she literally time traveled from past Wano. And let me just say, we're definitely gonna learn more about her in a Void Century flashback, right? Because that's where she came from. But anyways, the story from there is pretty simple. Oden and Toki, plus 2 of Oden's retainers, Inuarashi and Nekomamushi, eventually hopped from Whitebeard's to Roger's ship. But then, once Oden's 2 kids were born, they eventually took Toki, the kids, and the Minks back to Wano, so Oden was pretty much the only one who actually went with Roger to the final island Laugh Tale. And so while yes, the Wano citizens spent the shortest time on Roger's crew, arguably they had the most important role in even allowing the crew to find Laugh Tale to begin with. Next though, I do want you to picture what it would have been like to grow up as a tiny baby on Roger's ship, because that is exactly what we got with Shanks, who spent literally his entire life on that crew. It's actually kind of crazy. First off, how did he even survive having a bunch of pirates out of all people for parents? Like, yeah, it basically all started when Shanks here was picked up as a baby from the island God Valley, and from that point on, he was a certified Roger pirate. And what's actually really crazy is that we're just now learning a lot more about Shanks in Elbaf due to his, shall we say, complicated relationship with his family. But let's start at the beginning here, because as Shanks was growing up, it was pretty clear he was basically a prodigy. You know, Kind of like those kids you looked at and wondered how they were good at literally everything that they touched in school. You know who I'm talking about. And yeah, that was pretty much Shanks. And he became so close with Roger that the captain eventually gave Shanks his previous Straw Hat. We can kind of assume that Roger basically was Shanks' father figure, right? Now, what you may have forgotten though is that Shanks never actually went to Laugh Tale. He stayed back when Buggy got sick, so he doesn't actually know the entire true history yet either. At least not that we know of. But clearly he was in on Roger's final plan because again, I do think that Shanks specifically had the most important role here, stealing the Nika fruit from the government and then was supposed to take it to Ace until Luffy messed everything up. But hey, I guess it all kind of worked out in the end, and Shanks even went on to become a Yonko as well after defeating and capturing Loki. However, there's still a ton of mystery around Shanks and his true goals, of course. Like, is he still really on board with Roger's plan to help someone else become the next Joy Boy, or has he gone a little bit rogue here and now wants to be the one to find the One Piece himself for whatever reason? We of course don't really have the answer to that at this point, but major plot twist here, we do know for a fact that Shanks is a celestial dragon now, or at least he was born one, and his father and twin brother are some of the strongest fighters in the entire world government. And also, we now know that Shanks did go up to the Holy Land at least once, probably twice, so he clearly knows about his own heritage, but there's still a ton of mystery surrounding all of this. Like, did Shanks ever get to meet his family? If so, what did he say? Is he actually a secret agent for the world government and is gonna betray the Roger Pirates' grand plan? Like, these are just a bunch of the questions that my theory brain just cannot stop thinking about. Like, no matter how much we learn about him, it will always stay a mystery. You know, just how I can't stop thinking about all of the great content we're putting up over for you on Patreon. I'm talking about exclusive artwork, early access special content, bonus videos you only get to see there, polls, news, and who knows, maybe even a special One Piece X Baskin Robbins crossover taste testing stream coming in the near future. I think they don't have that in Japan, but would be pretty cool. And you can get access to all of that by supporting the channel using the Patreon link in the description below. I really appreciate every single one of you who already helps us out making great content here. But with that, the bills have been paid, and Shanks might very well end up being stronger than Roger at this point, but the next Roger Pirates brought some serious muscle to the table nonetheless as well. And I kind of think of them as the buff squad here because looking at them, they just look at max marks right here. This dude is massive and with some serious ink as well. Now, I like to think that he's probably not as strong as Sunbell here, who is the only fishman on the crew and definitely one of the biggest and strongest in terms of sheer muscle that we have ever seen. Plus, come on, this dude uses a trident as a weapon, and how cool is that? Then we have Colonel Mugren with his old-fashioned military uniform and cigar, but if you're looking for big swords, then we've got CB Gallant, whose sword shape and handle are actually pretty similar to Mihawk's famous blade Yoru when you really look at it, which is kind of fascinating. Not only that, I'm also kind of getting gladiator vibes from him, so I kind of wonder if he's originally from Dressrosa maybe and fought in the Colosseum there. And then another one of these giants is Don Kino, who looks like Oda drew him straight out of an old-fashioned sailor movie, you know, with the striped shirt, sailor's cape, and the big pipe that he has. Pretty cool. Like, all the Roger Pirates designs are just insanely awesome. And now all of these guys look pretty big, but I still don't think any of them could stand a chance against Roger's right-hand man, Silver's Rayleigh. And since he's my favorite character in One Piece, I am always happy if I have the chance to talk to him. And this man, honestly, I think kind of saved the entire crew. Not only did he quite literally save their lives in Sabaody, but he also trained Luffy during the time skip. Straight up a masterclass in all three types of hockey that I don't think Luffy would have figured out anywhere else at that time. So yeah, without Rayleigh, I would argue we probably don't even have a post-time skip to begin with. Let's wind things back to the beginning though, because Rayleigh was the very first person that Roger recruited to his crew. They kind of started it all together with nothing but a tiny boat that Rayleigh had stolen, their dreams, and the Straw Hat, I guess. But yeah, clearly from there on, they only went up, and Rayleigh himself is a master-level swordsman and a genius with all three types of hockey. And not even speaking of his prime, at his old age right now, he can still throw down with an admiral or Yonko, so so you know back in his prime, he was absolutely the real deal. And just like all the other Roger pirate officers, he's an absolute ladies' man. His partner is of course the former Empress of Amazon Lily Shaki here, so not exactly a bad partner to have since she was also once the captain of the Kuja pirates. I don't know why she puts up with Rayleigh though, because he mostly spends his time gambling and getting himself kidnapped in Sabaody, but he does have his charms, which I have fallen to as well. He's just so badass. I mean, look at the dude. Like the beard, everything. So cool. Now, of course, he's not just been hanging out though. Don't forget about the Roger Pirates plan. I mean, I think he was really stationed at the halfway point of the Grand Line on purpose to help the person who's gonna be the next Joy Boy kind of transition from paradise into the new world, which is exactly what he did. He even met with Shanks about 12 years ago, and Shanks told him actively about Luffy, so yeah, not really a coincidence that he met with Luffy right when the Straw Hats needed him the most and when they came to the islands. Next though, I do have a theory that I really think will make your head spin a little bit, because look, we haven't met all that many Roger pirates in the actual story yet, but there may have been one hiding right in front of us for literal years. Who is it, Mano, you might ask? Well, who could be part of this legendary crew and also have a massive role in the fate of the world without us even knowing about it? We already talked about him early in this video, so I do want you to take a look at everyone's favorite Albatross fake news spreader, Big News Morgan. Yeah, that's right. None other than the newspaper mogul himself could be a Roger pirate. And before you call me absolutely crazy, just hear me out. I made this theory a couple of years ago, but I stand by it. Morgan's has a huge influence on the entire world. His newspapers are pretty much the only source of information to people about major events that otherwise they would just straight up know nothing about. And sure, I mean, he's a little bit corrupt and will use clickbait headlines, which we would never do on this channel. Yeah, he does that. But if Roger did have a plan to help the next Joy Boy along the way, then controlling the source of the world's information could have been a massive part of that. Like, just really think about it. Morgan's has basically boosted Luffy's profile all across the new world and even called him an emperor way before he was even ready for that title. Plus, we've never actually seen Morgan's human form, and Oda has confirmed that he did eat a devil fruit and just walks around in his hybrid form the entire time. Alright, so let's get this straight. If he were to be a human from the Roger Pirates, then which one could he possibly be? That's a great question, actually. Thanks for asking. If I had to pick, I'd probably choose Mr. Momora right here, just down to the simple fact that his head sure likes a lot like a bird's peak, wouldn't you agree? So that's a bit suspicious, and they both have golden circles on their heads as well. And if not him, then how about Moon Isaac Jr. here? Because, I mean, come on, just look at his nose. He's practically part bird already. I don't know, I would say so. Or I guess it could also be Seagull Guns Nosdon, simply because his name already has a water-based bird in it, and Big News Morgan does have the news coup. So yeah, don't be too surprised if one of these guys turns out to be the big Birdman himself. Bringing this back now to some bigger fish though, without the next crew member here, Roger probably wouldn't even have lived to find Laugh Tale to begin with. Which means I can only be talking about one person here, the ship's doctor, Crocus, who was supposedly one of only a handful of doctors alive at that time who could possibly keep Roger's terminal illness in check long enough for him to complete his journey. And so, kind of like Oden, Crocus also only joined for the last few years of Roger's adventure. Besides that though, we don't actually know that much about his past, beside the fact that he met Brook's former crew and agreed to take care of the giant whale Laboon. Though I gotta say, I'm actually kind of wondering what happened to Laboon while Crocus was sailing with Roger, but anyways, all this time Crocus has just been posted up at Reverse Mountain, the entrance to the Grand Line, where is exactly where Luffy met him as well after he entered the Grand Line for the first time as well. So yeah, once again, another Roger pirate suspiciously positioned, you know, at a strategic point along the Grand Line to help the next Joy Boy on his way. And honestly, Crocus came in pretty clutch too, because without him, the Straw Hats would probably have been lost forever. Remember, at the time, they didn't have a lock post, so unless Crocus gave them one and showed them how to use it, they literally wouldn't have gotten anywhere. Oh, yeah, and not only that, he was also the first person to ever tell us and Luffy about Laugh Tale. Oh, yeah, and another thing we need to point out, Crocus also has this pretty cool flower vibe design going on, and this next group of pirates also seemed to get some extra attention when Oda was designing them for sure. First up, we have Gunyu, who straight up looks like an edgy boxer with his spiked mohawk hairstyle and his spiked fighting gloves. Funnily enough, his name is is also one of the only ones that Oda actually wrote in Japanese kanji, and his name translates to Eye Dragon, which is kind of badass. Then of course we have my personal favorite, Millet Pine, who honestly kind of looks like a classic fantasy dwarf, you know, with the Viking helmet, large beard, and his iron mace. On the other hand, I can't say that I quite love Peter Moo's design though, because he looks like another certain Eggman with the super skinny legs and the egg-shaped body. Yeah, not a big fan. He does dress like a classical noble though, so I do wonder where he actually came from before joining Roger. Now, Doringo here is actually really interesting, because at first it kind of looks like he has wings, but turns out that those are just parts of his jacket, because when the crew was partying at the hot springs, he didn't have the wings on his bare back at all. Or who knows, maybe Oda just forgot to draw him with wings or something. It happens, but it's still kind of an interesting detail. Yui here though is just absolutely hilarious to me. He looks like a moody teenage boy with his red flaming hair and jacket that goes all the way up to his mouth. As with so many of these guys, not exactly someone you would expect to be on the Pirate King's crew, right? Also, before I forget, we also need to quickly talk about Roger's ship, the Oro Jackson, which is very special in its own right. Not only is it possibly my favorite ship in all of One Piece design-wise, just looks absolutely epic, but there are some really interesting facts about it. For instance, it was actually built on Water 7 by Tom, who was Frankie's stepfather, I guess kind of father figure, the fishman who actually later got executed for that. Now, the ship not only is very cool, it is also very special in the sense that it also was made from Adam wood, the strongest wood in the world, probably from the tree on Elbaf as well, that Frankie then later made the Sunny out of as well. So there's another great parallel between Luffy and Roger, which is really important, and I wouldn't be too surprised if we potentially even see the Oro Jackson as part of the treasure on Laugh Tale or something like that. Which, you've been waiting for him, now brings us to the legend himself, the captain. The man that most people in the One Piece world would say is the strongest character in history, Gold D freaking Roger. And there are just so many questions that we have about him. What was his dream? Who gave him his hat? And who were his parents that gave him such crazy genetics? Well, we don't know any of that, and I don't know if we ever will, but there are some surprising facts that you may have never known about the former Pirate King. For example, you may have never realized that Roger literally spent decades of his life sailing the Grand Line. Seriously, he's not speedrunning things like Luffy is, because he first started his crew about 52 years ago in the current storyline, and they didn't find Laugh Tale until 25 years ago. Since you're probably eating right now while watching this, let me do the math for you. That's 27 years in between. Of course, he didn't spend all that time looking for Laugh Tale at all. He didn't even know what a Laugh Tale was supposed to be until he reached the final island of the Grand Line, Lodestar. But even after he found Lodestar Island and learned about the poneglyphs, it still took him yet another 14 years to find the road poneglyphs and finally learn the truth about Laugh Tale. Let's just say he did a lot of groundwork that Luffy can now use, which just kind of blows my mind, because if it took Roger that long to find everything, then just imagine if Luffy didn't have all the help he's had along the way, you know, to make things so much smoother for him. Like, he would never have gotten this far so quickly without the Roger Pirates' help, which just makes you appreciate Roger and everything he discovered even more. But not just that, Roger's adventure was more than just finding Laugh Tale. Of course, there was the famous clash with the Rocks pirates on God Valley. You may have even watched my theory that Roger, Garp, and Rocks were all friends before something changed and Rocks became the notorious pirate who wanted to conquer the world. That's yet another question I absolutely need some answers to, but I honestly don't know if we'll ever get a true Roger flashback outside of what we already got in Wano. I really hope so, but I wouldn't be too surprised either if it didn't happen. Then of course, Roger also had his famous clash with the Golden Lion Shiki at the Battle of Ed War. And let's be honest, Roger and his crew probably would have lost it if it hadn't been for the freak storm that saved them from Shiki's fleet, but that's not all that there is to Roger's life either, because of course we know what happened after he disbanded his crew and prepared to die. Because of course he went on to meet Portgas de Rouge and fathered a son. And now once again, I do believe that this was all part of his plan, that a next Joy Boy would be his son and his crew would help his son find the way and become the right person to use the One Piece. But I do think that the important part of this is that it seems like Roger specifically chose Rouge as his partner, most likely because she was also a member of the D-Clan. Now, we don't know if Roger knew her before his adventures or only met her afterwards, but it's gotta be important that he wanted his son to have parents who were both D-Clan members as well, which is maybe a clue that Luffy's mother was also a D, but again, so far that is only speculation. Now, tragically, Roger's adventure wouldn't get much further than conceiving his son. He knew about the disease that was gonna cost him his life, so he decided to turn himself into the Marines to get executed and instead start the Great Pirate Era, which this is kind of still baffling me to why the Marines would ever agree to make his execution so public. Like, they could have just killed him in prison and then showed his dead body off to the world, but no, they gave him the biggest stage and an audience, which let him inspire an entire brand new generation of piracy to go and find the One Piece. So yeah, I would say pretty big fumble from the world government right there, which led to the current era of chaos and piracy, unless someone in the government, you know, kind of did Roger a favor here, which could be true as well. But all of this goes along with Roger's plan that we've been talking about this entire video. Though I do want to mention that this is probably not even Roger's plan, to be specific, in the first place, because he disbanded his crew after finding Laugh Tale, so that kind of tells me that whatever he learned there is the real reason he made all these choices to break up his crew, have a kid, turn himself in, station his crew around the world. So it's actually not Roger's plan technically, it might just be Joy Boy's plan that set everything into motion. Like, seriously, think about it. He set up the poneglyphs, left clues about the ancient kingdom, and most likely was the last person to use the Sun God Nika fruit. And if you want to know exactly how Joy Boy set his 1,000-year plan in the making into action, you can watch my big video on that right here. It's a really fun one and leads to a bunch of other cool videos we did on the channel. As always, Shanks so much for watching, and a special thank you to the wonderful Patreon members that you see on screen right here. You're all absolutely awesome. I love you, and you truly help us make everything, you know, that we do here. All right, I will see you in the next one. Peace out.